Today on Nova Legends podcast, I have Coach Amanda Baker, who's Langley Saxons or 1901 this year, getting ready to head into the postseason. Um, Amanda is an IT program manager at Definitive Logic in Arlington. She's also a graduate of Forest Park High School, where she won a state championship, and also Mary Washington, where she had a great career there as well. Coach, good to see you. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Oh, of course. So, well, look, I thought I would start with um, give a little bit of your background. I've talked to you before, but usually either we're previewing a game or with other coaches. Um, you're actually an '04 graduate of Forest Park.
hmm
While you were there, you won a state championship. You played with, I believe, a WNBA player, Monica Wright. Um,
hmm
and then you got to the state quarterfinals one year and lost to the team that eventually won the final, Atlee. Um, Besides being all region in basketball, you were all district twice in softball, all region in cross country.
Oh
All
man.
district. Yeah, yeah, it's a lot. You ran track as well, and went to Mary Wash. You played for Chrissy Kelly, who's still a great coach, and she's still going at it. And then you went to Mary Washington, and you had a great career there. And your sophomore year, you guys won your first 27 games. Got to I believe, the final four, and then you got to the final 16 your last year. Maybe I got those switched up, but you played for Dina Appleberry, who's another great coach. And I just had an amazing career. The last, I guess, 12 years, coach, you've been at Langley, or 13?
This is year 13.
You're 13. You've been at Langley. You've won 3 Liberty District tournament titles, 1 Northern Region title, and you've been state finalist twice. Coach, did I get most of that right?
Sounded good. I
Yeah.
think
Okay.
so.
Yeah. You're probably not. You're probably a humble person. Don't think about it too much, but it's pretty amazing. And excuse me for not shaving. I got in a cycling accident the other day, so I'm still kind of recovering from that. All's good, but just a little beat up here. Um, well, look, the other day I was reading in the Washington a local paper that you'd won 200 games, and I just for some reason I just think of you as a young coach, and I'm not calling you old right now, but it just seems really surprising. You're almost a veteran coach. You've been around for a while. When you think about it, have you felt like you've been doing this a while now? You're no longer quote unquote a young coach.
I guess so. I mean, I feel young sometimes in the sense that every year is a little different. So every experience is different. And sometimes you forget about all the different ones leading up to the year you're on. But hitting that milestone was definitely a reflection point. I almost felt emotional when it happened because I started thinking about all these different girls that I've coached over the years. I'm like, wow, this is a lot of people I've gotten to know, and it has been a huge chunk of my life. And I guess now, yeah, I do consider myself more of a veteran, but in the moment, it's like, oh, this is the year that matters the most. And this is the only year I'm thinking about. So you sometimes lose perspective on the amount of time that you've been coaching.
Yeah. Well, coach, also you've been able to do this and have three children. You're married to a former local player, Justin Baker, and I know Justin
Mm-hmm.
coached with Coach Houston over at West Potomac. I believe they may have even played together in high school. I'm not sure about that, but did has that been challenging to manage the fact that you have 3 kids and you're responsible for what, 45 kids or so in the Langley program?
When I was pregnant with Penny, my oldest, I was very nervous about how are we going to balance this, and because at the time Justin was still coaching with Coach Houston at West Potomac, and he graciously offered like, "Hey, this you're doing great. Why don't you keep doing it, and I will, carry the load in the winter at home." And I gotta say, he is an absolute gem of a husband, like the most supportive person in the entire world, and he makes it easy for me. I know in the moment at home things are crazy, but when it's time for me to leave, it's he's so gracious about like, hey, go focus. This is your time, and it becomes manageable when you have a partner like Justin. And then I have Bob and Clay, the most supportive assistant coaches in the world, that they take some of those administrative things that can take time and effort and energy, and they take it off my plate. And they're always looking for ways to help that, make the focus on the team my priority. So having people around you that are supportive and understanding of your situation and, administration like I have at Langley, it's not as hard as it looks. um, but I think Justin's probably the star in the show and all of that.
Yeah. Does Justin have strong opinions about your team and the way you guys play, or like most good husbands, he just learns to be quiet and to do his job?
Justin and I talk about the team all the time.
Yeah.
I trust his opinion as a basketball expert so much that, he's usually one of the first people besides Bob and Clay I talk to. And I'll say, what do you think? Or what do you think of that game? How did it go? And he'll always have something for me that's constructive and helpful and I can chew on and think about and apply. So yeah, he's definitely not, sitting back and chilling during these games. He's actively engaged and always has something for me to think about afterwards.
Yeah. Well, you've been, yeah, you know, since you've been doing this for a while, and you've gotten older, you've had to learn. We've been talking about dealing with parents on our Facebook group. You may have caught some of those posts because there's been some interesting stories going around the area. And I was thinking about you in preparation of this interview, and that as you've gotten older, has it been easier for you to deal with parents? And plus the fact you have your own kids now, I would think with Langley, you'd have some really powerful parents. We all want our kids to do the best, and it could be pretty intimidating for a young coach. Has it helped you to have some experience and some success and some age when you're dealing with parents?
I'm sure experience probably helps. I might seem a little less approachable in the sense of questioning what I'm doing. I think that sometimes can be a struggle for new coaches where there's questioning, is there proof that this person knows what they're doing? And I think having a track record certainly helps. One thing that we try really hard in the program to do is to have the girls be advocates for themselves. And I think the parents have kind of caught on to that and they understand that, the player is the first line of communication, especially at the varsity level. And of course, if that isn't going the way the parents want, then I would welcome any conversation at that point. But the type of student athlete we deal with at Langley, they're very mature and they're very confident in their ability to come speak to a coach. So I think I've been spoiled in that way where I don't, at least recently, I don't think I've had to deal with a lot of negative parent feedback because we can handle a lot of that player coach. And I appreciate that so much.
Yeah, exactly.
But I know it can be difficult. And I think being a parent now, like you said, I have my own kids. I have more perspective on where maybe a parent might be coming from. In my first few years, I'm sure I would have been more defensive, just like, well, why are they questioning me? Where is this coming from? Like, I know what I'm doing. But now I'm a little more open to like, all right, they probably might be feeling protective of their child. Like I need to hear where they're coming from. And that has given me a more understanding perspective going into those sort of conversations.
Yeah. That makes sense. Now, the parents, Forest Park is much more diverse socioeconomically. You have, obviously, you have your upscale areas, but you have a little bit more of everything in Prince William County than you're going to have in the northern part. Fairfax County, the Langley is one of the richest school districts in the country. Are the type of parents different in Langley that you would have at Forest Park?
That's an interesting question. I think when I think of the parents at Forest Park, the only parents that come to mind are my own. And I think they're a lot like the Langley parents, where they were so supportive. They came to everything. They drove me to every game, every practice, got me everything I needed. And that's the type of parent that's at Langley, where they're involved. They care a lot about the success of their daughter. They come to every single game. So all the best qualities are the same with, what I remember from Forest Park and what I'm, interacting with daily at Langley. So there's probably stuff that I just didn't catch on to maybe as a child, but yeah, I just think of my own parents and they're so much like the Langley parents.
Well, your parents probably behaved yourself because you were always starting in one of the stars of the team. So it's always easier when that happens. How about the athlete? Now, over time, I've noticed that the wealthier schools like Yorktown, where my oldest kids went, McLean, Langley, Madison, the wealthier schools now are doing much better in sports than ever. When I was young, the wealthier schools do well in individual sports like cross country, certain track and field events, any upscale sport, but they didn't necessarily do great at team sports. That's changed over time. I think a lot of that is because, kids don't play necessarily pickup into whatever sport they're playing. A lot of it is programs that parents put their kids in, and where you have more resources, you're going to have kids that are getting those kind of advantages. Do you feel, first of all, do you agree with that? But second of all, do you feel like the athletes that you're getting at Langley are different than the athletes that you played with at Forest Park?
The type of athlete, yeah, is probably different. I mean, um, I think there was a lot of athleticism that played very well in basketball at Forest Park.
Monica Wright.
Someone like Monica Wright. We haven't had one of those come through Langley yet. That's maybe will never happen. But there have been a lot of D1, high D1 prospects that came out of Prince William County. So I do think the athlete is different in the Woodbridge area. But to your point about, I guess, um, the resources that it takes to now have a good team and some of the opportunities that kids at Langley might be getting, I think the ability to access individual training has changed a lot since I was a kid. And when I was playing at Forest Park, I mean, the gym was always open. We were in there every day, off season, summer, and there were no rules about restrictions. So we were developing a lot as a team in those situations. And we didn't have trainers like they have now. It was like you were with your high school coach or your AAU coach, and you were constantly with the girls that you were playing with all the time. So I can see why teams were really good from that area for a long time. But now looking at, I mean, I don't have a ton of background beyond my 13 years in what Northern Virginia teams were like, but I know now there's Evolution, there's Elevate, there are all these different entities where you can go and get the skills training. And if you do it with a group of girls that you're going to play with for a long time, you can get that team bonding and team development together. And I think that's kind of maybe even the playing field, because those are things you can pay for and you get great service from, and then apply it to your high school team. So something like Evolution and those private companies has definitely helped Northern Virginia. I mean, my own daughter's in it now. Like, we know the value of it. So
Exactly.
we're going to take advantage of that type of stuff too.
Yeah, because there's no good coaches in your household, so you might as well go out, yeah, go out and find some. You know, you have not been in the building working. I mean, your profession is in the IT field. Have you ever wondered what it'd be like to be in the building where you coach, or is there any particular advantages or disadvantage? I would think sometimes it might be good to be away from the kids, but in other times it might be good to have a watchful eye over your team.
It's funny, yeah. When I was graduating in college, I went to grad school to follow that exact path. I thought I was going to be a high school teacher, be in the building, living that life. And then I happened to get a job in the field I'm in now, and I just enjoyed it and never stopped. So I finished grad school, but never pursued that original dream. And sometimes I think about what it would be like to be in the classroom and be accessible to the girls. Like, if they had things they wanted to talk about, it'd be so easy to just swing by my classroom and chat, or I could pulse check how they're feeling throughout the day. And it wouldn't be like, in practice, if someone's low energy, I have no idea why. Like, I might have been able to sense that ahead of time. So I'm sure there are advantages to being in the class or being in the building in a classroom and the girls having easy access to me, and vice versa. But it is nice too to have a break from each other where I'm not constantly watching them. They can live their lives a little bit and not have to worry about, big sister watching. So
Yeah.
it's worked well, this balance so far, but there are moments where I wonder what it would be like.
Yeah. Have you found your coaching ability and your development in coaching helped you in your professional career as a program manager? Some of the skills you use in motivating your team and your assistant coaches, all the things that come into play, does it help you in your profession?
Absolutely. With coaching, you have to have quick decisions. And I think I've become a lot more efficient in making quick decisions in my professional life. I think talking in a public setting, like, I'm used to addressing a group of 15 people all the time, and being in front of parents, being in front of administration, it's not something that stresses me out anymore. So that definitely has translated into my professional life, where I'm comfortable commanding a room and soliciting opinions that may not be positive ones, taking them to constructive feedback. So absolutely, there's tremendous value in, the profession complements coaching, and coaching complements my profession.
It's interesting because a lot of times, and me and you talk about this amongst others, that coaches don't get paid a lot. Uh, Podcasts don't get paid a lot. Podcasters don't get paid a lot even unless you get very fortunate and works out well. But I found the same thing when I'm talking to coaches and interviewing people, executives and stuff. It's been very helpful for my career. So sometimes the payoff is not apparent. Now, look, you're also a great softball player, and at least very good, and also a runner as well. Did you ever think about what it would be like to coach those sports?
No, I'm so far removed from softball. I would be terrible at it at this point. But I enjoy watching. Like, we had a couple players not too long ago. Kylie Allen was her name. that she was a great softball player. So I went and watched our Langley team, and it's fun to kind of relive those moments. Our high school team wasn't very good, and the Langley team was fantastic. So it was cool to see, like, wow, there are some very talented high school players out there. But no, I've never thought about coaching that. In cross country, I had an amazing coach, and so I know I would be nowhere close to the level that he was operating at. So I would be a fish out of water. But I love running. I still do it today.
Yeah. Who was the cross country coach, and what made the coach so amazing?
His name is Dave Davis. He coached at Georgetown before going to Forest Park. So he had incredible collegiate experience under his belt, and he just knew how to connect with every runner, make every runner feel important. He knew how to put together individual plans. I just wouldn't be able to do any of that. I don't have the knowledge or expertise, and he definitely set the bar very high.
So coaching in different sports might be slightly different skill sets. I mean, I tend to believe you'd be good at anything you try, but it could be a slightly different skill sets in coaching different sports.
I think so. I mean, running, it was a team where point system added up and you could have a team champion, but that's a very individual sport too. So you have to, as a coach, commit a tremendous amount of time to ensuring individual growth. I mean, there's part of that in basketball, absolutely, but the team, I think, is always first in the basketball vision, where I think maybe with a sport like cross country, this is all speculation, there's a lot of individual planning that needs to happen. Softball might be a little bit easier of a translation, but there are some very important, significant skills required for a sport like softball. Like if you don't have pitching, it's gonna be really hard to win. And I don't think I would be able to develop those sort of skills, not having done it myself. So yeah, it's probably different in those ways.
But do you see elements of Coach Davis in your coaching today?
I do. The fact that I always felt like he cared a lot about what I was doing as a person. And that's something I really try to do with my players. I want them to know, like, each of them matter, each of them have an important role. I value what each of them are doing. And he was one that, was great at doing that. So I hope I'm doing him justice in that way, but I'll never forget the way he made me feel. And that's how I want, my players to feel.
Yeah. Well, on the other hand, I read a beautiful article by Spencer Nussbaum in the Washington Post last week about tough coaching and your high school coach, Chrissy Kelly. Now, it was a great article, and it was very old school, and it's I haven't read. I know tough coaches exist, but it was interesting to read that story, and I'm sure a lot of it connected with you because you played for Coach Kelly. Did you find it accurate? And obviously, maybe she's changed, but are you a tough coach also?
I thought it was authentic. I mean, I know Coach Kelly, and I'm sure she was her genuine self. And I thought the players gave interesting perspectives about her. I thought it was nice that it kind of hit both sides. And I talked to her very briefly afterwards. But am I a tough coach? I try to be tough but fair. I think my personality is probably different on the sideline than maybe a typical coach. So I think my definition of tough might be different than what the definition of tough was for that particular article. I just hold high standards, try to communicate effectively, and yeah, challenge the girls. And I think that's the type of toughness that I bring.
Did you know how good a coach she was when you're playing in high school? Sometimes when you're in high school, you're not the most aware. You're just playing for the person who happens to be coaching at your school. Did you know of her reputation before you got to Forest Park?
Well, I think her reputation happened while she was with me.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, because this was her first head coaching job. So
oh, is
my
that right?
freshman
I didn't
year,
know that. Yeah.
yeah, she got the job, and that was her first head coaching position.
Wow.
She had been an assistant at Mount Vernon prior, so there wasn't like a legacy yet. She was young, and we were young, and we were learning together. I knew we were getting better. I knew we were winning, and there was probably a common denominator with having someone in charge that is helping us develop in that way. So definitely there's a legacy now. No one can deny that. But at the time, we were newbies together.
Was she from coaching under Kenny Farmer at Mount Vernon?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
That's right.
she's in that lineage. It's very interesting. So when did you know you were a pretty good player? When did you start getting serious about basketball?
Ooh, I mean, I've always played. I was always serious about wanting to be, good at it. I think when I made varsity as a freshman. I was like, oh, this is a good sign. To be fair, though, we didn't have any seniors at the time, so it was a little easier to make a varsity team at Forest Park. And when I was playing, I was like, okay, I mean, I'm competing with these people. I'm not bad. And then I think at the end of my senior year, I realized I really didn't want to stop playing. And so I tried to figure out what's next for me. And Mary Washington wasn't too far. My mom actually went there, and I talked to Coach Appleberry, and I liked everything she was saying. And that's why I continued. It wasn't because I thought I was great. It was just I loved playing and I didn't want to stop. And then when I got to Mary Washington, I started to feel more confident in my abilities because I was playing point guard. So I had the ball in my hand a lot more, and I felt my impact a little bit more. And I think I left there feeling like, okay, I was pretty good. I can hang up the shoes knowing I was an effective player.
Yeah.
So I don't think there was ever a moment like an epiphany of like, I'm great at this. I should keep doing it. It was just I liked it and opportunities were there. So I just kept going.
Yeah. In preparation for this, I found an article in the Washington Post where they interviewed you and right before the regional final, maybe even a state game. And I guess you guys had won a playback game. And that was such a good memory. We used to have these playback games back when the regular season meant something. And you guys, I guess, were on your way to play Atlee. And that was Monica Wright's freshman season. And that was the year you lost to the team by 1 point. That was ended up being 30-0 and state champs. Tell us a little bit about that season. It must have been an amazing season.
Oh man, it's such a blur at this point, but that particular game I remember very vividly. I remember the gym, it was dark and dusky. I remember all of the girls on the other team. They had these twins that I actually played against in softball my entire young career also. So I knew them well from that. Not personally, but I just knew them as athletes. Mm-hmm. And I can see all their faces still, which is so funny. But going into that game, I thought we would win. We had Monica, like we were riding high and we had done so well. And I remember the last play extremely well where Keisha Valentine shot it, missed the jumper. Monica got the rebound, put back, and we thought it counted before time expired. The refs waved it off, and the like crushing feeling afterwards, you'll never forget that feeling. But the rest of the season, man, it's a bit of a blur. I'd have to look back. I should have done that leading up to this.
No, that's okay. No, it's not a memory. It's not a memory test here. Do you think you learned something in that loss that helped you the next year and in life? Because I don't think people realize how, I don't want to say traumatic because that's overstating it, but how big those moments are on a young athlete. Was that an important moment in your career?
Now that I've been through so many coaching moments, like some of those state championships at Langley, I think might have overtaken some of my playing memories that I don't know if I fall back on those quite as much as maybe if you'd asked me that same question, 10, 15 years ago. But it's funny how quickly I can remember it when you bring it back up. So it definitely was impactful. But I think as far as lesson learned from it, maybe it's going into the postseason, it's very fitting that I think about like the best team doesn't always win. And so you have to make sure you're extremely prepared all the time for every circumstance because you just never know. You never know where the ball is going to fall or what the ref's going to say, or there's so many other factors that are uncontrolled that you've got to be ready to control everything you can.
So as good as Atlee was, you still feel like Forest Park was every bit as good?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We had so many pieces. And the next year, we probably showed even more some of the skill around us. Like we had 3 Division I players on our team. Courtney Portell went to William and Mary. Ashley Braxton went to Pitt. And then, I played Division III. Whitney French played Division III. DeCarroll Davis played at the Coast Guard Academy. So we had a lot of college players on that team. Probably a couple more that could have gone and played in college and just chose not to. So we were deep. We were really good. And obviously you got Monica Wright at the head of all that. I mean, she's one of the best players to ever do it in Virginia.
Yeah. Well, the next year, it is a happy ending. You guys, this year you end up beating 2 teams from the Hampton Roads in the semis, and then in the final, I believe Wilson and I'm losing the other name. But anyway,
Indian River, I think it was.
Indian River, that's right. So you guys picked yourself off the ground, won a state title. Do you have pretty clear memories of that game, winning the state title?
I remember a moment for myself, which is selfish, but I remember in the third quarter, we had not scored the entire third quarter, and I lined up a 3, and I remember thinking like, oh, I hope I don't airball this. And I shot it because the depth perception was so weird at VCU. as a high schooler, you're just not used to having, bleachers behind the basket like that and so much space. And it felt funny shooting it. And I remember making it thinking like, oh, okay, that's great. And then looking back, realizing those were the only 3 points of the quarter. So little things like that stand out. And I remember like after the celebration, getting the little plaque or the little medals and stuff. That was really fun.
Yeah. Did Coach Kelly have a big influence on the way you coach?
Yeah, I mean, I actually was an assistant for her at South County for 3 years. So
Okay.
after I graduated from Mary Washington, I reconnected with her and I wanted to explore the opportunity to coach. And obviously, you can't just go right into a head coaching position. And she let me join staff for a few years, and I learned a ton. I mean, of things that I didn't realize you had to be ready for, just how to put together a practice plan, how to teach defense. I've been on the receiving end, but I've never had to show someone how to execute what I know. So there's a breakdown, a methodology that you have to think about. So it was great to learn and kind of see someone in action that had been doing it for a long time and had had success with it. So yeah, she was a great person to learn from.
Yeah. Well, then you go to Mary Washington, and when you think about Division III basketball, I interviewed a Division III legend who she ended up going to. Her name was Colette Cunningham. I'm not sure if you ever heard of Colette, but she ended up going there
Sounds
for
familiar.
academic reasons and not for basketball reasons. And back then, this is in the early '90s. There was a huge gulf between Division III and Division I on the female side in soccer. And today, that gap has narrowed. So where is Division III in terms of women's basketball? And I know since I've been following local game for the last several years, I'm following the women that are playing right now. So it looks very competitive. But where is the women's game on the Division III side then and now? I mean, my guess is this Division III women's basketball has gotten very competitive as the men are.
I would say so. I mean, you think about some of the top players in our Northern Virginia area, and a lot of them are going D3. I think maybe when I was in high school, some of these players could have probably gone D1. But the talent level across the board is so high, and that trickle effect, like some very, 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 very good players are going Division III. And now it's not kind of a slight. I think before it might have been like, oh, you're not good enough to go D1. But now it's like, oh, you're good enough to go D3. That's great. You get to keep playing. And I actually was just at Mary Washington this past weekend and got to watch them play, and the talent's crazy. It's amazing how good some of these players are. And I follow CNU closely because so many Northern Virginia girls end up there. And sometimes I think like, wow, if they had played when I was in high school, I bet she could have gone D1. So the talent is insane. And I think it's great for the sport. And it's wonderful there's opportunity at that level where they can play high caliber basketball and still be, students at the same time. I think that balance is still there. That hasn't changed a ton. But yeah, the gap is closing, but at the same time, all three levels are moving at an exponential rate to this insane talent level. It's so
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. What was your adjustment to college ball? I know you got playing time right away. You were an important member of the team by your sophomore year. You owned the point guard position. I think you either led or set records in assists and steals. I think just led the team. But anyway, it seems like it was a pretty seamless adjustment for you to the college game.
Yeah, honestly, it wasn't a huge jump for me. Part of that was probably the high school environment I played in. When you go against some of the players that I was playing with on a regular basis in high school, it wasn't a huge change with physicality and athleticism and skill and speed. So I was fortunate in that way. It wasn't a big jump and change. I had to get used to a new coach. That was probably the biggest thing to get used to. But honestly, personality wise, they were both, very demanding. So I was ready for that. And they both focused a lot on defense. So I kind of knew how to get on coach's good side. I had to play good defense and I was ready for that. So the adjustment wasn't crazy for me, but I can understand how it could be, especially if you're not used to playing at a fast pace and defense is not something that you had a great foundation in.
Well, let's talk about Coach Appleberry a little bit. So you're saying she's a defensive coach, and she's similar in that she has high expectations, like Coach Kelly. What else did you learn from Coach that you may even use today?
Hmm. I steal some of her plays. I definitely still use some plays from college. What else did I learn from Coach? I mean, I had a great relationship with Dina, and I still talk to her pretty regularly. I'll send her names of kids in the area that I think would fit well in her system. But I think when I think about her, I think about being grateful that she trusted me early. And I think that's something in my coaching. I'm not afraid to go with a younger player because there's a progression that you can get to if you invest early in someone who's showing potential. So that was something I learned from her. And I thought she was great about making sure there was depth at every position. So I try to make sure that we're developing skills beyond our starting five. You always have to have that next group ready. But yeah, I think she put a lot of trust in me. And so I try to entrust my players too, that let them know I've got your back. You're going to make mistakes, but we're working through this together. And I appreciated it a lot as a player. And I didn't forget that part.
Well, I don't want to get any rumors started here, but if it worked with you and you and Justin, would you ever have any ambition to coach at the college level? Is that something that would interest you in the right situation?
A few years back, it crossed my mind. I was like, I really love this. Why don't I go 2 feet in and make this my life? And I looked into it. It would be a huge change for our family. I mean, I think I do pretty well in the private sector where we would have to adjust to a salary decrease. And then I thought more and more about just the balance that high school coaching offers, where my livelihood does not depend on wins and losses. I don't have this extra burden with decision making that this could affect my job if I give this person a chance and they don't succeed. Those sort of pressures don't exist when I have balance with my profession and in the high school environment. It's just different than the sort of pressures coaches at the college level deal with. So it's no longer that appealing to me. I think I have the perfect situation. And to be at a school like Langley, I think that would be insane to lose, that sort of opportunity and the fun that I've had here. So no, it's not really on my radar.
Yeah. How about the D3 scene as a player? Now, I know a lot of boys who become men and play college Division III. They miss the atmosphere that you'd have at a high school game. High school games, you could have a packed house on a Friday night. It's just the games mean so much. College, you may go to a game, there might be 100 people in the stands if you're lucky. You just don't have that environment. Is it the same thing on the girls' side? Do you miss kind of the high school environment that you had?
I think if you talk to some high school girls about the environment, they're probably not as worried about it as maybe like the boys are, because we've played in empty gyms and I don't think it phases. I mean, it'd be great to have students and have a huge student section that's going nuts, but we have become very accustomed to just focusing on ourselves. So if they're there, wonderful. If they're not, it's not going to change what we're doing. So I think the girls' side's a little different in our expectations of support. Again, it would be wonderful. I'm not saying that we don't want it, but it's not going to change anything for us. And so the type of player that's going to go to the college level, that's the type of kid that's going to go like, I'm there to be good, to win, to succeed, and I could care less about environment. At least that's my assumption.
Yeah, we could do so much more with doubleheaders, regular season, and also postseason, obviously, to help the girls' games with atmosphere. I mean, last year I was so frustrated because Madison, the girls and the boys teams played like 4 miles apart at the exact same time. So you're making students choose who to support, which is I find that unbelievable. Well, one thing you're able to do is you also made tournament runs as a player in college. Is it the same kind of feel because you got to the Final Four, got to the Sweet 16 twice? Is it the same feel you have in high school as you had in high school?
Yeah, I mean, it's exhilarating to go into a gym and not know, like, am I going to leave this gym continuing as a player or is my season over? And that sort of pressure, it's hard to replicate in your day-to-day life. That adrenaline, the feeling of, pressure that is positive. It's really hard to find that anywhere else in the world in your day-to-day. So I crave those moments still. And I think that's probably a big reason why I'm in coaching, honestly. And so as a player, it's just this feeling that you can't find anywhere else. So I enjoyed it every time going into the postseason, just like, what's going to happen? Am I going to step up? I'm ready. Like I can do the back and forth you go through mentally to get through a situation like that. It's just fun.
Yeah. Did you ever were you ever tempted to run some cross country or go out for the track team in the off seasons? Is that something that interests you in college?
No, I think once I started playing with the team at Mary Washington, I became so all in on basketball that nothing else mattered. So
Yeah.
the thought of spending time away from my team was just incomprehensible. Like we became best friends, we did everything together. So maybe if there was some sort of compensation, there's NIL now, maybe that motivates other people to get their brand out more. But at the time, I was so in love with my situation. The thought of spending time anywhere else was, yeah, again, like I couldn't even fathom having done that.
Yeah. Well, so you leave Mary Washington and you get into the IT world and you're coaching with Coach Kelly. Finally get a head job. What did it feel like when you first got your first head job? It must have been a great feeling.
It was a great feeling, but it was also very nerve-wracking. I was like, all right, I did it. Now what? Like, what do I do? Because I thought I learned a lot as an assistant, but there are still things you just don't know what a head coach deals with on a day-to-day basis. So the trial by fire those first couple of years was tough. It was a learning curve that took me a little while to get used to, and it took me a couple of years to get my feet under me. So I was very nervous at the first, intro with parents and players and those first few practices, trying to figure out like, what's my style? What's my voice? What do the girls respond to? What are we going to emphasize? Who are these other teams? Like, I don't know the other teams that well. But like now since I've been around for a little bit, I kind of know what each coach is going to do, what their favorite plays are, that kind of stuff. And you just don't know any of that your first couple years. So it was a lot of being nervous and uncomfortable and being comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So it was tough the first couple of years.
Is it complicated also to decide what kind of coach you want to be in terms of how you play? I mean, you've played for some great coaches in cross country and obviously in basketball as well. So you get your chance to be a coach, and all those things you just referred to in terms of opponents and dealing with parents. I could tell that would be. It's easy to see how that would be a little bit scary. I've done it as well. But how about in terms of X's and O's? Did you have strong opinions about how you wanted to play?
The only opinion I would say that was a strong one was I knew we had to be good defensively, because that you can apply a very solid fundamental man to just about any style of player. But offensively, you can't just walk in there and assume you're going to implement some system that you think is great until you know what you're working with. Like, what are the skills I have? What are the types of players that I have? And that's going to influence your decision making. It still does year after year after year. But I felt very confident knowing that I'm going to make sure that our team can play excellent man, because that'll at least keep it competitive. And then I'll figure things out offensively as I get more experience and I get to know these players better and I can get some continuity. But the defense would probably not change very much year to year. So I heavily invested in that the first couple of years. And I think that paid off, where there was a foundation that I could kind of fall back on, like, okay, that worked well. Like it's paying off. Like keep doing that. And then, yeah, offensively year to year, it changes.
Yeah. What player did you coached and that really had an effect on you, that really kind of changed the arc? I mean, you must have had a player or two that when you first got to the state finals that really added to your credibility and made people feel like, wow, Coach Baker is a really special coach.
There's two that immediately come to mind. The first is Paige Galliani. She was probably the player that I think changed the tide for me from being like struggle to, okay, I can do this. Like I can figure this out. I've got someone that is an unbelievable talent. She's listening. Not that I was saying the most impactful things in the world, but when you have your best player willing to follow you, it goes a long way with the rest of the team. And I thank her all the time. Like whenever I talk to her, which it's not every day, but when we see each other, I just think about like, thank you for buying in, giving me a chance. Like you changed my life. And she's probably the first that really tipped the scale to where I was like, okay, I can definitely do this. I figured something out. And then the person that came and then the winning change, we went from being pretty good to like, oh, we're really good, was Jordan Callahan. I mean, I've never met somebody that is just such a winner in everything she does. And her winning became contagious and it almost became like an unstoppable force. So I was just trying to like keep fanning the fire because I've got magic here with this kid. And those two are probably the ones that, I think about players that changed my life. They're the first two that come to mind and that changed the program and changed the culture. And, I'll never forget them. But a ton of other kids I could have named, but those are probably the top two on the list.
Yeah, if we get any more than that, then we'll start leaving people out. So we'll keep
Yeah.
two from now. Are there certain teams that you just I mean, your reputation is incredible, but are there certain teams that you just seem to really connect with? And then they may have been your best coaching jobs because they might not have been the most talented team, but you guys were just dialed into each other, and the players were dialed into to each other as well.
Again, I'll pick two because I don't want to leave anybody out, but the two teams that went to the state finals, I mean, to do those runs is so hard. And then those two teams in particular, what you described, it was unreal how they could focus on one opponent so fully and understand this game plan so in tunely that um, game after game after game, we could like upset people because we were not supposed to take these journeys. Like that second team that went to the state finals, we were the third seed in our district tournament. Like we should
Wow,
not have gone
that's
that far.
crazy.
um, but the way that they could focus, execute, refocus, execute, like it's unbelievable the sort of student athlete that was on those teams. And to the credit of those girls, a lot of them were multi-sport athletes, so they were just crazy competitive on top of that. Um, but that team in particular, and then the first state tournament team was another one that they understood their individual roles so specifically that I think they couldn't be stopped because they each knew what their value was. So I always strive to get to that point where every person knows what they're supposed to do. But yeah, those two teams in particular, I think were unbelievable.
Yeah, I wish I would have got the chance to see them play because they did sound incredible. Well, when I talked to you when I first met you, you were so excited. You loved your team because they were all veterans. Next year I talked to you, you loved your team because it was all new team. So I'm like, this is a coach that focuses on the positive. If I got if I got veterans, I love veterans. If I got new players, I like younger players or less experienced. I like molding players. Well, last year it was kind of a rebuilding year, but you end up getting into the regional tournament and it went really well. And then, this year, obviously, you're 19-1 with only a loss to Holy Childs, I believe, Coach. Is that right?
Yes.
Where is this team on that arc? Now, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. I know you're going to take it one game at a time, but when you look at an experienced team and then a complete rebuild, where is this team on that arc?
I think we lean a little on the experience side. We're young, and like you said, we only have one senior in the starting lineup, only two on the team. So by grade and age, we're young, but Anya's been playing a ton of minutes since her freshman year. Maddie's been starting since her freshman year. Peyton, Bree, they played a lot of minutes. So we're a unique balance of being young, but they've had early opportunities that maybe some of my other teams that were very veteran heavy didn't have. Like there were some teams where girls didn't really start getting playing time until their junior season. So this is unusual where we've got a lot of veteran young players that have been in a lot of situations. So I lean a little on the experience side, but they're still young in kind of the way they approach the game where there's not a ton of pressure or urgency on them. Like we've got to get it done this year. So they can play loose. They're a little more relaxed.
Yeah. Well, I do want to get back to this team, but I want to follow up on one thing you just said before about multi-sport athletes. Now, when you coach at a school like Langley, are you doing okay on time, Coach?
Oh yeah.
Okay. When you coach at a school like Langley, the parents are always wealthy enough to send them to private school. One thing I have learned since I've started the podcast is that multi-sport athletes are less likely to transfer. It's the specialists that end up of all players end up transferring to private school. If you find that to be the case, that it's in some ways it's good to have multi-sport athletes because they're the ones less likely to leave you.
I've honestly never thought of it like that before, but hearing you say that, that makes a ton of sense.
Hmm.
When you become embedded in the culture at Langley, it's really hard to think of yourself as not being part of it anymore. So those girls who are playing multiple sports, who are part of these different pockets in the community, yeah, I can see it being a very difficult decision to just up and leave all those friends, all those families that you're so close with. And I find also that if they have a sibling who's already at the school, that helps a lot. So it's usually if it's the oldest kid that they're trying to make a decision on, I'm not going to win that battle. If it's a single sport athlete and they're the oldest, like they'll probably take that jump. But yeah, once you're in at Langley, I think it's hard to leave it. You love it.
Yeah. Well, you guys do a great job. Your program does a great job with social media. How important is that as part of the job these days to do the Twitter feed, to do the Instagram, to keep the community and also the players getting them some exposure as well? How important is that to the job now?
Um, I think I probably do the bare minimum, honestly. And it's because I know I need to. I want to make sure that the girls are recognized and seen in opportunities that come from being available, like having your information out there. My players actually help with it more than maybe it appears. They run the Instagram account, and they're the ones who post the graphics and
Oh,
the
okay.
beautiful score layout. I mean, my tweets are like, "We play tonight here at this location." I put like bare minimum information. Um, they're a little more willing to put beautiful graphics and stuff together. But I do think it is part of the job. If you're not promoting the athletes that you have, they're not going to get seen. And some of them have aspirations to play at the next level. So there is, you know, there is definitely an understood assumption that coaches should help in all aspects of getting that player promoted. And social media is probably one of the easiest ways to get their name out there. So it's part of the job. I don't have any problem with it. I wish I was better at it, honestly. I get help from my players, so they're schooling me on it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit more about your team. Now, you've had the incredible record. You guys have had a lot of close games, which is good because I think sometimes easy games can get a team complacent. It's nice to have some wins and having to execute down the stretch and win some games. Beat Robinson on the road, which is one of your biggest early wins. I thought that was a very nice win. So tell us a little bit about your team. You mentioned Anya, who is a great player. You mentioned a few others. I'm losing the names now. But let's hear more about your team and a little bit about your season.
Sure. So when I first got our schedule and I saw who we were playing in our first 7 or 8 games, I was like, oh man, if we can walk out of this 500, we'll be good. Like this is a tough schedule. And so many of them, like you said, were really close games that could have gone one way or the other, just 1 or 2 possessions difference. And it was so positive to see like we can handle these now. I didn't know we were at that point where we understood time and score, we understood clock management, we understood execution down the stretch, and the importance of making the right play at the right time. So I think that was enlightening for us as a coaching staff to see like, well, we're a little further along than maybe I realized. And so we could start experimenting with different things in practice, like implementing the playbook a little quicker or trying some defensive schemes maybe we wouldn't have tried early on. So it was definitely enlightening to see that our team could handle close game situations early. And it's crazy to think of 19-1 because each win has happened and they've added up, but I don't think I appreciate that big of a number until I say it out loud a couple times. I'm like, it's amazing sometimes to get a 20-win season and we're only one away from that. And we're still in the regular season. That's insane. So this team is talented. It's hard to deny that. But as far as individual players, Anya is fantastic. I think she's improved in so many ways from year to year to year. She's become a very good passer, which maybe wasn't in her skill set the last couple of years. She could do it, but now it's become something she thrives in. And then having a point guard like Maddie, who has a full year of varsity experience under her belt, she is basically a veteran as a sophomore. So she's able to run the show, and she's an incredible defender. I think that's probably the most underrated thing about her. Like she can completely ice out a player on the other team. So going into games, it's almost like a cheat code having somebody like Maddie on defense. And then we play 2 bigs, which historically we've gone with 4 guard lineups, but having 2 extremely physical players like Bree and Peyton inside that also have the ability to step out. Like Bree has guard skills in her skill set. So we're so flexible in how we can match up with other teams and styles that we can play. And then we've got Vicky, who is another perimeter player that offers tremendous ball handling, consistency on defense. She can knock down open shots. So we have this balance that I didn't know we were going to have going into the season. I was excited about the various skills that each player brought. And I haven't even had a chance to talk about the bench, but the way that this 5 has come together, I didn't know that they would complement each other so well. And I think that's been a big part of the winning. But we do have a lot of talent off the bench that you've probably seen a lot of different kids come off the bench because they're competing so hard for those minutes in practice that it kind of changes game to game of who's going to be the next one in. They really have to earn it in practice. And make their case each practice that it should be me this time.
Exactly. Well, every team has a different personality. Obviously, in terms of the setup, you have two bigs this year, what makes you different, and they're kind of young. But how would you characterize the personality of this team? Not how they play, but their personality compared to some of the other teams that you've had at Langley.
This team is very competitive with a different level of edge to them. Like they're killers. I've had some very competitive focused teams before, absolutely, but this group has a little bit of that killer instinct in them that I love, 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 love. And that was another reason going into the season. I'm like, we can make some noise because we've got some kids on the team that have this will to win that will carry us a long way. So anytime people ask me about the team and how I would talk about them or characterize them, I always say they're crazy competitive with each other, with opponents. Like they just all want to win all the time.
Yeah. Well, Coach, we're getting late in the season. Is the season flying by to you, or is it just me? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
where it's definitely all of a sudden there's a week left. When did that happen?
exactly. When you get to this point of the season, and this is I probably I don't want you to have to look ahead because I don't want if something happens that it to ever be my fault. Um, but in this postseason, you're clearly one of the favorites, and obviously, I think if you look at it, it'd probably be you, Robinson, and Centerville, just based on the current results. In the last 4 years, probably Madison was a favorite most of those years, at least some of those years, other teams. So this is a different situation than you've been at least the last 4 years. Uh, do you like being one of the favorites, or would you rather kind of be an underdog?
Mm. Oh man, there's no good way to answer that question because I think both are very valid and good stances to have. Because when you're the favorite, there's a level of confidence that comes with that. You have a track record to back up to say like, girls, we can do this. We've been doing it all year. Like, hey, let's just keep executing what we've been doing with minor refinements. So there's that level of comfort almost, but that can make you, susceptible to an underdog who has the ability to play a little less or a little more free with a little less pressure on them. You can experiment because it's like, what do you have to lose? You can try something new and it can throw that, favored team off balance. So I don't know that I have a favorite position to be in. I think whatever the position I'm in is my favorite at the moment. So right now I like being in a position where we have, a good track record and we're confident in what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, look, last question, Coach. This has been great. It was great kind of hearing your journey and coaching, and both as a player. Um, if you're able to win a state championship this year, and the girls gave you a Gatorade bath, would you be mad at them for that?
No, I love it. I'd welcome it. Yes, so that would be amazing. I would enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, look, Coach, I'm going to try to get. I don't think we ever met in person, but I got to get to one of your games this year. I understand your team is very special. Very happy for you, and thanks for always making yourself available to talk to me. As you know, I love talking basketball with the coaches around here, and obviously you're one of the best. So it's great for you to make some time for me. I know this has got to be a pretty busy time of the year for you.
No, I'm loving talking basketball with you as well, and talking about this team is fun. So thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, it's been great, Coach. Look, best luck the rest of the season. I definitely will see you soon.
Thank you. Have a great
Okay.
afternoon.
All right, Coach. You're welcome. Bye bye.